morning, good afternoon, good evening. It has been easy for ZANU PF to rule Zimbabwe because the Zimbabwean people and most immediately the opposition have been very easy to trick, very gullible. The 2023 elections, ZANU PF rigged those elections. This time, even the regional body, SADC, and the continental body, the AU, election observers, condemned those elections. What is disappointing is that instead of the people of Zimbabwe focusing on that issue and fighting it, the attention was easily drawn away from it. Within a few weeks of the election results coming out, Mnangagwa was able to throw a bone at the opposition, and they took it up with the usual excitement. The bone was simple. 2030 Mnangagwa and Zanu was the slogan. Here is an individual who, according to SADC and the AU election observers, had failed to hold free, fair, and credible elections. And I think SADC and the AU would have gone one step further and denied Mnangagwa legitimacy if Nelson Chamisa had not conned millions of his supporters to participate in those flawed elections. The issue here was to focus on this issue that Mnangagwa was illegitimate. And what the hell are we going to do to stop this culture of rigged elections, illegitimate regimes, and bad governance? But by extending himself and even expressing that, he wants to stay beyond even the 2028 term limit, it hardly served a year. And already he wants to extend his stay in power beyond the 5 years. And yet the people jumped for it. This has become the big issue in Zimbabwe. And in December last year, the party, as if to indicate that the issue of ED2030 is still on the agenda, passed a resolution number 1 of the party conference, that Mnangagwa must stay on until 2030. The party was sidelined for a while when Blessed Geza and a few of his war veterans came out and called the whole ED2030 bullshit. And ZANU PF has since spent a lot of money and time bribing war veterans to get them back into line. And when the party held its party conference a few weeks ago, the resolution was renewed. And the party announced that with great passion and reignited the whole issue of ZANU PF.
Now, therefore, be it resolved by the delegates to the ZANU PF 22nd National People's Conference as follows. State of the party. On the state of the party, that whereas the 21st National People's Conference of ZANU PF held on 26 October 2024 in Bulawayo resolved as follows. In recognition of the extensive developmental milestones and the significant socio-economic progress achieved under the leadership of the President and First Secretary of ZANU PF, His Excellency Comrade Dr. E.D. Mnangagwa, it is resolved that his term of office as President of the Republic of Zimbabwe be extended beyond 2028 to 2030. The party and government are therefore directed to initiate the requisite legislative amendments to give full effect to this resolution to ensure continuity, stability, and the sustained transformation of the nation. Noting that no notable steps have been taken to implement the above resolution, this conference hereby reaffirms this resolution and directs the Secretary for Legal Affairs and the Minister of Justice to ensure that before the 23rd National People's Conference, this resolution of the party is fully implemented.
What some people are failing to realize here is that this so-called ED2030 resolution is not the real big battle. ZANU PF knows that the real big battle is yet to be fought. And yet the opposition have taken up this fight with something that can only be considered as passion. They're totally focused on stopping ED2030. Here is one of the opposition leaders, Tendai Biti, speaking passionately on that very subject.
To the attempts to amend the constitution. You cannot amend the constitution to remove two limits without two referendums. One to actually deal with the term limits that are provided for in terms of Section 328. And the second referendum to make sure that when the amendments are made, they benefit you. So ZANU PF can't make these amendments without these two referendums. Fortunately, the majority of people in ZANU PF, as a matter of fact, are opposed to this amendment. Fortunately, 99% of Zimbabweans are opposed to this amendment. We will fight this, we will defend the Constitution.
Temba mliswa, temba.
Sorry about that. What matters here is that people should understand that as much as Mnangagwa may even want to stay in power beyond 2028, even he knows Could staying in power beyond 2028 will not be possible if ZANU PF was to rig the 2028 elections and fail to get political legitimacy. Rigging is not the problem. They've not implemented even one token reform. And so rigging the elections will just be as easy as they rig the 2023, rig the 2018, and so on. But getting legitimacy is another matter. Even in 2028, 2023, the issue of legitimacy was important because countless opposition elections had been held, and the people of Zimbabwe were warned that if you participate in these flawed elections, you will give the party legitimacy. So the argument was, do not participate. ZANU PF was always looking at the opposition participating. And so it should not come as a surprise that some of these ZANU PF agencies were urging and abetting the opposition to participate. Mnangagwa himself in 2018, he increased the bait for the opposition to participate. He created Pollard for no other reason than to reward those opposition leaders who participated in the flawed 2018 elections, even if they failed to win even a single seat. And indeed, it was that temptation that encouraged more people to participate in 2023 elections. The party realized that with the trappings being offered in Pollard, there will be a lot more presidential candidates. And so they to introduce a rule that said you needed to pay a fee to be a candidate, $20,000 US. And the number at the end of the day was reduced to 11 presidential candidates, mainly because many people out there would have wanted to be a candidate, could not afford the $20,000 US. So ZANU PF has always managed to manipulate the opposition to do what the regime wanted. And in this particular case, ZANU PF would want to see the opposition participate in 2028 as they've participated in 2023. And they've achieved that already by throwing this ED2030. They've drawn attention away from the fact that ZANU PF rigged 2023, and more significantly, it has not implemented even one token reform in preparation for 2028. And yet, here we have opposition leaders like Tendai Biti adamantly maintaining that they will fight the regime over this issue, the ED2030. They've completely forgotten that no meaningful reforms have been implemented. Let me state this clearly. ED 2030 is a skirmish at best. Mnangagwa himself knows that if he was to win ED 2030, get his stay in office extended to 2030 by hook or by crook, and ZANU PF was to lose the 2028 elections, or rather rig the 2028 elections, but fail to get legitimacy. And thus, SADC and the AU refuse to give the party legitimacy, and thus forcing the regime into the same situation it was in 2008, a new GNU. Mnangagwa will be nowhere. What is the point of being a dictator when the dictatorship itself is being dismantled? You'll be a fish out of water. Winning ED 2030, a skirmish, and losing the war, the 2028 elections, and legitimacy will be defeat for Mnangagwa. And ZANU PF leaders and most of the ZANU PF leadership know that too. They may fight over this ED 2030. I agree with Tendai Biti. They're saying some of the ZANU PF members do not want Mnangagwa to stay on. They know that this issue of Mnangagwa is delivering this vision 2030 is all bullshit. The economy is in comatose. But they all know that if risking losing 2028 legitimacy and be forced into the GNU, the party this time would lose. Because they know that the 2008 to 2013 GNU should have dismantled ZANU PF completely. They were lucky that Mnangagwa, that Morgan Tsvangirai and his friends, Tendai Biti, Chamisa, and so forth, turned out to be corrupt, incompetent, and utterly useless. But they know also that this time, if they are forced into another GNU, they will not be so lucky. I repeat, Mnangagwa is smart enough to know that winning ED 2030 will be of absolutely no purpose to him if ZANU PF was to rig 2028 and fail to have legitimacy. Mnangagwa and his ZANU PF friends would rather lose the skirmish of ED 2030 and the party rig 2028 and have legitimacy. In other words, the opposition, if they were smart, they would also know that the ED 2030 is a skirmish. The real battle is making sure that ZANU PF does not rig 2028 elections and have legitimacy. At the present moment, if you listen to what Tendai BT and his other opposition friends are saying, they are going to fight ZANU PF on the ED 2030. And once they've been engaged in that fight, they will go on to participate in the 2028 elections. ZANU PF can afford to let them even have victory in the ED 2030, as long as ZANU PF is guaranteed victory and legitimacy in the 2028 elections. Our fight should be to end the dictatorship. End the dictatorship, and you'll end Mnangagwa's rule. Mnangagwa, even if he was to win ED 2030, if this ZANU PF was to lose the 2028 elections and fail to get legitimacy, Mnangagwa will be like a fish out of water. Dictators cannot survive without the dictatorship. We should focus on making sure that the ZANU PF dictatorship does not rig the elections and get legitimacy. That's all we need to fight for. We should not waste our time on fighting the ED 2030 agenda, because it is a skirmish. I would rather lose a skirmish and win the war than win a skirmish and lose the war. The opposition have been outwitted by ZANU PF so many times. This is just another occasion where ZANU PF is outwitting them. We should not fall for it. We should focus on winning the war, ending the dictatorship. Even if Mnangagwa should manage to win his 2030, dictators do not survive without the dictatorship. Fish do not survive without the water. Think about it. Thank you very much. Have a good afternoon.